I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't even shut it hard enough to wake the dog. The latch caught softly behind me, like it knew this was a secret too important to announce. If Laura heard anything, I'm sure she chalked it up to the wind again. The same wind she always blamed when something shifted and she didn't want to notice. She used to say our old house breathed at night, creaking and settling like an old man too proud to ask for help. Maybe she was right. But this time it wasn't the house. It was me. She probably rolled over in bed when I didn't come back, reached across to my side and found nothing but a cold imprint on the sheet. Still half asleep, still convinced I'd just gone for a run, or maybe downstairs for coffee. That's what I always did, right? Early riser, creature of habit, reliable Simon, the man who made sure her vitamins were set out next to her glass, who never forgot to fill the humidifier, who rotated the mattress every 3 months without being asked. I did it all, until I didn't. The car was already packed before midnight. Just a small duffel bag, a hiking pack, and 2 burner phones, both prepaid, both registered under names I picked from gravestones during long walks at the cemetery near the edge of town. Call it poetic, call it grim, but the dead don't talk, and I needed names that wouldn't echo. I left behind everything I knew she'd want, the things she valued more than me. Thermostat set to 72, because that was her comfort zone. Trash taken out every bin, dishwasher emptied, mail sorted and rubber banded on the counter. I even left the little sticky note she scribbled the grocery list on, tucked neatly next to her phone like it mattered. And the ring? I didn't leave it on the nightstand. That would have been too dramatic, too loud, too obvious. No, I left it under the salt shaker, the one she always kept slightly askew, like it irritated her to have it centered. That spot held her quiet resentments. Receipts she didn't want to explain, comments she didn't want to answer. So that's where I tucked the ring. Fitting, I thought. She didn't see this coming. I was sure of it. Not because I hid it well, though I did, but because she stopped seeing me a long time ago. That's the thing about being married to someone who only wants the idea of you. They never look closely enough to notice when you start fading. It wasn't sudden. I didn't wake up and decide to disappear. This took time. Months of planning. Quiet goodbyes in my head. One by one, I erased myself from the life we built, the bank accounts, the online footprints, the shared bills. Slowly moved money into untraceable forms. Bought gold coins and stored them in safety deposit boxes under different initials. Closed accounts when she wasn't watching. Paid off the second mortgage with money she didn't even know existed. She thought we were struggling. She always did. But we weren't. She just didn't ask questions. And I stopped answering them long ago. There's something liberating about being invisible to the one person who's supposed to see you. Eventually, you realize you can walk away and they won't chase you, because they were never really holding on to begin with. By 4 a.m., I was already crossing into Tennessee, headlights like ghosts passing me in the dark. I didn't have a destination, not really, just a direction. South. Away from the version of myself I left sleeping in that house. I kept the radio off and the window cracked, letting the cold air slap my face awake. Somewhere around mile marker 112, I pulled off at a gas station, bought a stale cinnamon roll, and sat in the car eating it like it was the first meal I'd ever tasted alone. It was quiet, not the lonely kind, the clean kind, the kind of quiet that doesn't ask anything of you. At a rest stop outside Chattanooga, I shaved off the beard she never liked and changed into clothes that didn't smell like our detergent. Tossed my old wallet into a trash bin and replaced it with one I'd bought months ago. New license, new credit cards, all prepaid, all under the name Michael Gray, a name that sounded like a second chance. That night, I slept in the back of the car, curled into myself like I used to on camping trips before we were married. No one knew me. No one would ask where I came from. It was terrifying, sure, but it was mine. And I realized something important in that rest stop parking lot. I hadn't been scared in a very long time. Numb? Yes. Silent? Constantly. But fear. That was new. And it meant I was alive again. There was no grand betrayal that led me to this. No affair. No explosive fight. No packed suitcase at the door. Just a slow death by 1,000 small dismissals, and the quiet confirmation that she never really looked at me when I spoke. That when I came home from work, she greeted the dog first. That our anniversaries became obligations. That the notes I used to leave in her lunch were no longer noticed, let alone kept. I once asked her, casually, "Do you think people can fall out of noticing each other?" She didn't even look up from her phone. Just said, "What kind of question is that?" and went back to scrolling. That's when I knew. Could have stayed. Most people do. They shrink themselves, bend around the loneliness, bury the resentment deep enough to function. But I didn't want to be most people. I didn't want to wake up at 60 and realize I'd lived someone else's idea of a safe life. So I disappeared. Not in anger, not in revenge, just out of necessity. In the early days, I used to imagine her waking up in panic, calling my phone, leaving voicemails, crying maybe. But the truth? I don't think she cried. I think she rationalized it, rewrote the story in her head, told herself I had some midlife crisis or mental break, made me the problem so she didn't have to look at what was missing. And that's fine. Let her. Let her keep the story that helps her sleep at night. I have mine too, and mine doesn't include her anymore. By the time the sun came up, I was already deep in Georgia. I turned off the highway onto a smaller road that cut through the woods and ran alongside the coast. Somewhere along that route, I saw a sign that just said, "Dock Services, Help Wanted." I pulled over. The building was worn down, paint peeling. The kind of place that needed hands, not resumes. Perfect. I didn't introduce myself right away. I watched from the parking lot for a few minutes, saw the way the guys moved. Slow, methodical, exhausted. There was a quiet rhythm to it. Like they'd been doing this forever and stopped expecting it to get better. I understood that look. I'd worn it. When I finally walked up to the counter, the old man behind it didn't ask for my story. Just looked at me, narrowed his eyes and said, "You know outboards?" "Yeah," I said. "Good. You start Monday." That was it. And just like that, Simon disappeared. And Michael Gray started breathing again. The morning I vanished, Laura probably woke to the quiet like it was some kind of gift. She always liked stillness in theory. Lit candles, lo-fi music, a mug of tea. But not when it came from me. Not when it was my quiet. That kind of silence made her uncomfortable. It reminded her something was wrong, even if she couldn't name it. I imagined she rolled over first, eyes barely open, reaching instinctively for the warmth that used to be there. My side of the bed cold, sheets smooth, the imprint of me already gone. She probably sat up then, blinking toward the hallway. No smell of coffee, no humming from the kitchen, no soft creak of me stepping over the third floorboard that always groaned. She checked her phone. No messages, no missed calls. Just that little line of texts from the night before. The last thing I ever sent her. "You should try sleeping in tomorrow." That was it. No heart, no period, just words. I wonder if she stared at it longer than she needed to, rereading it for clues, trying to remember if I seemed off, trying to trace it back to a moment when I shifted and she didn't notice. She padded out to the kitchen in socks. The dog followed, tail down, ears twitching. He knew before she did. They always do. The house looked untouched, but wrong. Her favorite mug sat on the drying rack, clean, not used. She always found coffee waiting for her. Not because she asked, because I cared. It was our unspoken thing. She drank it slowly, left lipstick on the rim. I never wiped it off. But that morning, there was no pot brewing. No timer set. Just the scent of absence, if such a thing exists. Then the hooks by the door, only her keys hanging. Mine were always first, neatly lined. House, car, mailbox. Now, gone. She probably stood there too long, trying to make sense of a moment that hadn't caught up to her yet. I imagined she opened the garage next. My car gone. My gym shoes still in the rack. She didn't notice the boots missing, or the worn denim jacket I'd had since college. She tried to throw it out once, said it looked too lived in. I told her that was the point. When she made it back to the kitchen, she probably found the note on the fridge. not a letter. Just a sticky note in my handwriting. Trash day. Thermostat set. Be good to the dog. And then the salt shaker. Tilted like always. She lifted it. Slowly. Like it might explode. And there it was, the ring. I wonder if she cried then. Or if her mouth just dropped open in that silent disbelief people have when their whole story breaks in half. I don't think she told anyone that day. I know her. She probably started with a story. Something simple. He went out for a run. Then, he's not answering his phone. Then the subtle panic. Maybe his phone died. By afternoon, she called my job. They told her I'd submitted 2 weeks of time off. Approved and confirmed 3 weeks prior. Her voice must have cracked. That's impossible, she probably said. He would have told me, but I didn't, because telling her would have defeated the point. Then she checked our accounts. First the joint checking gone. Not empty, just closed. Frozen. Savings cleared. Automatic payments canceled. Passwords changed. The second mortgage? Paid off. Not by her. She never asked where that lump sum came from last spring. She just smiled and said, "Glad it's behind us." And the credit cards? She found those frozen too. Only hers remained. Mine had vanished along with my name. That's when the questions stopped being about where I went. And started being about when I started planning to go. Because by then, it was clear this wasn't a breakdown. This was a clean break. And every trace of me had already been swept away. She must have opened drawers expecting socks, t-shirts, receipts. Instead, nothing. Maybe a lint ball or two. The scent of cedar from the closet where I used to keep my jackets. Empty hangers. Suitcase gone. She checked the bathroom cabinet. No toothbrush. No razor. No aftershave she used to complain about but secretly liked. Just her things. Centered. Neat. Like I'd never been there. It's funny, the things people miss when someone leaves. She didn't cry over the ring or the bank accounts. No, she cried days later because she found my favorite hoodie gone. The one she always stole in winter. The one that made her feel safe. That's what she said to her friend, later. I know because that friend sent me a message I never answered. She's not sleeping. She's unraveling. But I didn't leave room for her to follow. Because the photo albums? Gone. Every single one with me in it. Not out of spite, but because I wanted my life back. The version of me before I became a side character in someone else's story. I took letters. The old ones, the ones from our early years when we still wrote each other on actual paper. Before texts and busy calendars. She kept hers folded under a blanket in the guest room. Thought I didn't know. I knew. I left behind what didn't belong to me. Her journals, her books, the framed photos of her family that always sat on the hallway shelf like little monuments to a world I never fully entered. She had everything she thought she needed. Except me. And now she had to ask herself the question I'd been silently screaming for years. Was he ever really happy here? That night, I know she sat on the floor in the living room, the one we remodeled together, and replayed everything in her mind like a detective going over a crime scene. Looking for motive. But there wasn't one. Not the kind she understood. Because she thought comfort was love. That routine meant security. That showing up equaled connection. But she never noticed when I stopped talking about my dreams. When I stopped asking about hers. She never asked how my day was. Not really. Just a casual, "Hey, you good?" While scrolling through her phone. And every time I tried to reach for her, emotionally, mentally, she nodded and smiled like she was humoring a child. That's what love became. Kindness. A courtesy. Not a connection. So I left. Not because I hated her. I didn't. I don't. I left because I couldn't keep being a ghost in my own life. Because love isn't supposed to feel like a role you play. And now, as she sits there, trying to reconstruct the moment I decided to go, she's learning the truth most people never admit. The worst heartbreak doesn't come from being left. It comes from realizing you never really saw the leaving coming. By day 3, she'd already rehearsed a dozen versions of the story. To be honest, he's been under a lot of stress lately. He just needed a break. Some space. It's nothing serious. We're fine. She said these lines like someone trying to convince themselves, not just other people. Like the more she spoke them aloud, the less real my absence would feel. The more the facts would bend around her version of events. But by day 4, the cracks began to show. Laura was never good at pretending for long. She overexplained, laughed too hard at the wrong moments. Her hands trembled when she poured wine, and she started double texting friends she hadn't seen in months. Little things gave her away. Her voice going flat when someone said, "How are you guys?" And she replied too fast, too cheerful. When people asked where I was, she said away, then looked down, like the word tasted unfamiliar. The lie worked for a little while, but lies get heavy, even the small ones. So on day 5 she made the call. Private investigator. Discreet. Professional. Not the TV type with binoculars and trench coats. Just a man in a dull office with neutral walls and a notepad that never stopped flipping. His name was Eric. He listened, asked questions, took notes. When did you last see him? Monday morning. Was he acting unusual? Pause. No, not at all. Which was the truth. I wasn't acting. I'd been preparing for months. Do you think he's in danger? Another pause. I don't know. She said it because she had to, not because she believed it. Laura didn't believe I was in danger. She believed I was gone, and that I had meant it. Eric took everything she gave him and followed the threads, but each one led to an empty room. No financial trace, no phone signal, no GPS, no credit card use, no social media updates, no random ping from an old password or subscription. My name had evaporated. 12 days later, she got the report in a sealed envelope with a paperclip that left a faint rust stain on the corner. She read it in the kitchen, standing, not sitting, still wearing her work clothes, coat on, purse still slung over her shoulder. She didn't even take off her heels. The report was only 8 pages long. The last sentence was underlined twice in red. This was not a disappearance. This was an erasure. That line echoed in her head for days. She walked through the house like a stranger, flipping light switches on and off, staring into corners like I might suddenly reappear from the shadows. But there was no trace, no coffee cup in the sink, no shoes by the door, no leftover voicemail messages with my voice on them. She opened drawers expecting receipts or letters, old work badges or birthday cards. But they were gone. All of them. Even things she didn't know I knew she'd kept. Like that note I wrote her the first time we had a real fight, scrawled on the back of a grocery receipt. I'm not going anywhere. She had tucked it behind a family photo in the hallway frame. That frame was still there. The note wasn't. She began to understand what I had done. Not just leaving, but removing myself. I hadn't walked out in rage. I hadn't stormed off mid-argument. I hadn't written a goodbye or left a dramatic letter on the table. I had simply vanished. And more than that, I'd chosen what stayed and what didn't. She went to the closet and found her side untouched. Every hanger just as she left it. Every sweater still folded. Her scarves still looped the same way she liked. But mine? Not a single thread. She didn't know when I took the photo albums, or the letters, or the keepsakes from our anniversaries. But she felt the absence like a physical cold. She opened her jewelry drawer and found something odd. A small, empty space. One she couldn't name. But she knew something used to sit there. She just couldn't remember what. That's how grief starts. Not in the big moments, but in the blank spaces where certainty used to live. Laura checked her email next. No messages from me. None in the trash folder. Not even in spam. It was like my address had been wiped from her contacts completely. When she tried to call, the number gave a dull tone. This number is no longer in service. She tried to text me. The message turned green. Please, just tell me you're okay. No response. Are you coming back? No answer. I don't understand. But I did. I understood perfectly. I had become so good at being overlooked that it gave me the freedom to disappear. All I had to do was stop giving, and she had nothing to take. She used to call me boring. Not directly, but in comments about how safe I was. How reliable. Her therapist once said I was emotionally stable, like it was a liability. I was the wallpaper, the background music, the fixed object she leaned on when the rest of the world spun. She loved me like a piece of furniture, comforting, expected, unmoving. But I was a person, and people bend, then break, then vanish. I know she looked through old photos on her phone, swiping through moments we pretended to be happy. Birthday parties, house projects, that weekend getaway to Asheville where she spent more time taking selfies than looking at the view. In every picture I was there, but in the background, holding her bag, watching the dog, carrying something, driving, waiting. That's what I had become. The man behind the scenes. The one holding the camera, not the memory. And now, she realized the photos were fading. Not literally, just emotionally. The light had shifted. My expression in those pictures wasn't joy. It was endurance. She brought up one in particular from our 10th anniversary. I was wearing a dark button-up, standing by the fireplace, half smile on my face. She zoomed in, stared at my eyes. They looked tired. Not the kind of tired you fix with sleep. The kind that sets into your bones when you know you've been erased while still standing there. For the first time, Laura saw it. The man she thought would always be there, wasn't. And worse, maybe he never really had been. Not in the way she assumed. And now, she stood in a house that was technically the same. Same furniture, same paint, same layout, but nothing fit quite right. Because the person who held all the quiet pieces together had left. And he wasn't coming back. Michael Gray. It still felt strange the first few times I said it out loud. Like trying on someone else's coat. It fit, technically, but it hadn't molded to me yet. It wasn't Simon. Simon belonged to her world. To that house. To a version of myself I'd slowly outgrown and learned to shed, piece by piece. But Michael Gray? He was simple, quiet. A name with no history, no assumptions, no wedding registry or shared tax returns. He was who I had to become. I ended up on the coast. A small town in Georgia that smelled like salt, rust, and motor oil. Not the kind of place people vacationed in. This wasn't beach towels and cocktails. This was fishing docks and grease-stained overalls. The kind of town you pass through without thinking twice. Which made it perfect. The boat repair shop was off the main road, tucked between a crumbling bait store and a liquor shop with one flickering neon open sign that buzzed 24/7. The storefront was worn down, wood faded gray like old bones. No website, no business cards, just a hand-painted sign that read, East Line Dock Services. Under it, in smaller letters, we fix what floats. I stood outside for a full 5 minutes before I went in. Not because I was nervous, but because I was taking in the silence. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of expectation. No one in that building was going to ask me where I'd been, or why I left. I stepped inside. The air smelled like salt water and fuel. A box fan rattled in the corner. The floor creaked under every step. Behind the counter was an old man with oil on his jeans and a trucker cap that said, "Not today, Karen." His name was Hank. He didn't ask for a resume, didn't ask for my last name, just looked me up and down and said, "You know your way around outboards?" I nodded. "Used to." "Good. Come back tomorrow. We start at 6. That was it. I spent the first few weeks scrubbing barnacles off hulls and unclogging fuel lines. It was hard work. The kind that made your fingers bleed and your back tighten. But it felt honest. Direct. There was no performance. No small talk about feelings. Just sweat, torque wrenches, and country music playing on a radio older than me. I didn't talk much. Didn't have to. Hank liked that about me. "You're like an anchor," he said one day, wiping his hands on a rag. "Don't make a lot of noise, but you keep everything steady." That stuck with me more than it should have. After 3 months, he gave me the keys to the supply shed. Said he was tired of dealing with inventory and that I seemed like someone who'd notice if we were down to our last can of solvent. By 6 months, I was the de facto manager. Hank spent more time fishing and less time counting screws. I overhauled the bookkeeping, reorganized the repair logs, and built a spreadsheet that tracked parts usage down to the bolt. "You should have been a damn accountant," he muttered, half impressed, half suspicious. I just shrugged. Had a lot of time to learn things. I rented a trailer out by the docks. Nothing fancy. One bedroom, one sink, one door that stuck when it rained. The walls were thin, the insulation worse, but it was mine. No framed wedding photos. No passive-aggressive sticky notes about forgetting to buy oat milk. Just silence. The real kind. I bought a used mattress off a guy named Rick who lived down the road and smoked Marlboros like it was a religion. Spent $40 on it, and for the first time in a decade, I slept more than 6 hours a night. That first morning, I woke up without an alarm. No dog barking. No, "Can you take the trash out?" waiting for me. Just sunlight coming through the blinds and the soft lap of the tide against the dock posts outside. I didn't bring much with me. A few clothes, a pocket knife my grandfather gave me, and one box of old letters I wasn't ready to burn. Not yet, but everything else gone. I didn't keep a phone. Just one burner in a drawer, turned off for emergencies. No laptop, no journal, no calendar reminders of anniversaries that no longer mattered. The absence of those things? It wasn't loss. It was freedom. I stopped wearing a watch. Stopped measuring the day in meetings and commutes. Time became fluid. I woke when the light told me to and slept when I was tired. I ate when I was hungry and didn't when I wasn't. And I started to remember who I used to be before I spent years being useful. There was a guy before all of that, before the husband, the mortgage cosigner, the trash taker-outer, the eternal plus one. He liked to fix things. Machines. Motors. Objects that didn't talk back. There was something comforting about that, the clarity of it. If a propeller didn't spin, you didn't sit it down for a heartfelt conversation. You looked for the clog, the corrosion, the crack in the blade, and then you fixed it. Simple, honest, direct, unlike people, unlike Laura. I thought about her less and less, not out of anger, but because the version of her that lived in my memory was already fading, like a picture left in the sun too long. Her voice, once so sharp in my ears, softened to background noise. Her face blurred. Her favorite things, the mug, the playlists, the candles, none of it mattered anymore. I didn't even take the dog. She loved it more than she loved me. That was clear. I didn't resent it. That dog got more affection in a day than I did in a month. And maybe it deserved it. Maybe we both did. I saved most of the cash I had prepped before I vanished. Quietly liquidated over 2 years. Bonds. Crypto. A couple shell accounts I opened using business LLCs that no longer existed. It was meticulous. Surgical. The only indulgence? After a year at Eastline, I bought 60% of the business. In cash. Hank raised an eyebrow but didn't question it. "You hiding from the law or a woman?" I looked him dead in the eye. "Does it matter?" He grinned. "Not to me. That was the deal. No questions. No past. Just engines, dock slips, and greasy hands. I repainted the shop. Redid the signage. Got us new contracts with marinas farther up the coast. Hired 2 new guys. By year 2, we doubled revenue. Hank was still around, but he mostly played cards and barked at the gulls. "You're the brains now," he said, flipping me the ledger. "I'll be dead soon anyway." I told him not to be dramatic. He wasn't. 6 months later, he passed away in his sleep. Left me his half of the shop in his will. No kids. No debts. Just a note in shaky handwriting. "Keep it floating. You're good at that." I cried when I read it. Not because I missed him, but because it was the first time in years someone said I was good at something without asking for more. Now I run Eastline on my own. 3 full-time employees. 1 beat-up office with a new roof. I still live in the trailer. Still don't own a TV. Some nights, I walk the docks alone, just listening to the water breathe. Sometimes people ask where I came from. I always smile. Just floated in one day, and that's enough. It had been 2 years. Maybe a little more. I stopped counting after the first 12 months. Somewhere between repainting the dock and replacing the rusted winch on slip 4, time stopped being something I measured in anniversaries or tax seasons. I measured it by storms and engine repairs, crab season and fuel shortages. When the air changed, when the water warmed, that was my calendar now, until she showed up. But she didn't walk through the door right away. That came later. First, it was an article. I had just finished patching a fiberglass hull for a tourist charter guy who always paid in singles and smelled like sunscreen. I came into the shop, wiped my hands on a rag, and saw Billy, one of our younger hires, squinting at something on his tablet. "Hey, Mike," he said. "You didn't tell me you were famous." "What?" He tilted the screen toward me. A headline, "Business of the Year. How a Quiet Coastal Shop Became the Backbone of Eastline." Right below it, my face, holding a wrench, covered in grease. A smile I didn't remember giving. "Who sent that in?" I asked. "Local Chamber of Commerce. They do a thing every year." He shrugged. "You're kind of a legend now." I laughed, but something cold moved through my ribs. I should have caught it. I should have known better. After 2 years of quiet, I got careless. Started thinking maybe the world had let go of me the same way I'd let go of it. But all it takes is one photo, one caption, one keyword, and a ghost becomes real again. I didn't know she saw it. Not right away, but part of me must have felt it. I started locking the office door again. Turned the burner phone back on for the first time in months. Just to check. Nothing. Silence. Until the trade conference. I didn't want to go. Hank used to avoid them like the plague. Said they were just for people in khakis trying to sell you overpriced ropes. But now I was the owner. People knew my name. Sort of. So I went. A bland ballroom in Savannah. Folding chairs. Lanyards. Ice water in pitchers that tasted like plastic. I gave a short talk about dock preservation and lean inventory management. Nothing flashy. Just facts. I remember someone asking what we did differently than the bigger companies. I said, "We show up. That's it." They clapped like it was profound. Afterward, I was walking through a side hallway. Fluorescent lights buzzing. Carpet too loud under my boots. When I saw her. Laura. Hair different. Lighter. Straighter. Makeup heavier. Wearing a blazer that looked expensive and uncomfortable. I almost didn't recognize her. But then she turned, and our eyes met. Just for a second. She stopped, mouth half open, like she was waiting for the universe to explain this to her. I kept walking, straight past, didn't speed up, didn't flinch. She stepped forward, said softly, "Simon." I stopped, turned, met her eyes. "My name's Michael." And then I kept going. No panic, no yelling, no cinematic meltdown. Just a hallway, 2 people, 1 ghost. The next morning, she came to the shop. I saw her through the window, standing by the door, unsure if she should knock or just walk in. She was holding something, a printed copy of the article, folded in half. I was explaining engine calibration to one of the new guys when the bell over the door rang. I didn't look up right away. Didn't need to. I knew it was her. She stood silently behind the counter. I finished my sentence, handed the manual to the kid, and turned. There she was, 5 feet away, looking like she hadn't slept in days. I kept my face still, calm. She spoke first. "Simon, please." "My name is Michael," I said again, same tone. "You left," she whispered. "You didn't even say goodbye." I stared at her, then went back to my clipboard, like she was a customer asking for a service I didn't provide. "I searched for you," she said. Still no response. "I thought you were dead. Now you know I'm not." She flinched at that. I think the coldness hurt her more than the leaving ever did. She stepped closer. "Why?" she asked. "Why didn't you just say something? Leave a note? Talk to me?" I set the clipboard down, met her eyes, and said, "Because talking never worked. You listened like it was a favor, like patience was charity." Tears welled up, but she blinked them back. "I didn't know you were that unhappy." I didn't reply, just let the silence speak for me. She scanned the shop like she needed to anchor herself to something. "You rebuilt everything. New name, new job, new life. You didn't leave room for anything from before." That was the point. But we were married. I nodded. Were. You loved me. Another nod. I did. And now? I hesitated. Not because I didn't know, but because the answer was too clean. I don't think about it. That's what gutted her. Not the words, but the absence of anger. She expected rage, tears, closure. What she got was indifference. The kind that only comes when you've already grieved someone while they were still next to you. She tried one more time. We could talk. Just talk. Please. I paused, looked at her, really looked, and said, "You're talking to someone who no longer exists." Then I walked into the back room. I heard the bell jingle as she left. Didn't watch her go. Didn't need to. 6 months later, she found me again. Suit, heels, polished confidence. At a trade event, she approached and asked, "Why didn't you fight for us?" I looked her in the eyes and said, "Because I was never part of your story. I was just the furniture." She didn't respond, just stood there, silent, as I walked away for the last time. 5 years on, she saw me in a magazine. No tears, just stillness. At home, a letter waited, unsigned. Inside, full property transfer. The final page. "Now you own the whole illusion." She collapsed, and I was already gone. New name, new life. Same silence she once called my weakness. Now she lives in it.